My name is Elise Monroe, and the man who promised me forever said goodbye in a text message. Not a phone call, not a conversation, a text. 7 years. 7 years of building a life together, of holidays with each other's families, of inside jokes and shared passwords, and the particular way he knocked on the bathroom door 3 times, always 3, when dinner was ready. 7 years. And it ended in a text that was 4 sentences long. But here's the part that stayed with me. Here's the part that I couldn't sleep through for months. In that same week, the same week he ended us, he posted a photo with her. Not hidden, not private, public, like I had never existed. Like I was furniture he'd replaced with a newer model. And what he wrote in that caption, that's where the story really begins. Before I tell you what he wrote, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if stories about women who were discarded and then became completely undeniable mean something to you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I genuinely read them all, and I need you to know that. Now let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand who I was before this happened, and who he thought I would always be. I grew up in a family that believed in love the way some families believe in religion. Completely, without question, as the organizing principle of a life well lived. My mother and father had been married for 34 years when I graduated college. They were the real version of it. Not perfect, not without friction, but genuinely, durably, unperformatively, in love. My mother still laughed at my father's jokes, even after 3 decades. He still reached for her hand in parking lots. I watched that growing up, and I thought, that's the thing. That's the whole point. I wanted that more than I wanted almost anything else, which meant that when I met Caleb Grant at 23, and he was warm and attentive and looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been carrying, I gave it everything I had. And here's the thing about giving everything you have. Sometimes you give it to someone who is holding it temporarily. Caleb was 26 when we met. He was in the early stages of building a tech consulting business with 2 partners. Ambitious, sharp, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make people feel like they'd been waiting for him. He had a specific way of paying attention when you talked that made you feel like the only person in the world. Later, I would understand that this was less an expression of love and more a technique he'd developed. But at 23, I didn't know that yet. I was working as a junior copywriter at a small creative agency. Writing was what I'd studied, what I loved, what I was genuinely good at. I had dreams that I held privately, a book, a real one, something that mattered, and I was working toward them in the evenings after agency hours. Pages filling up, something building. Caleb was supportive in the beginning. He read my writing and said the right things. He told me I was talented. He said, when your book comes out, I'm going to tell everyone I knew you when. I loved him for saying that. What I didn't notice, not then, was that over time, the book became a thing he was less interested in discussing. The writing became something he was more tolerant of than enthusiastic about. The evenings I spent at my desk became evenings that slightly inconvenienced the version of our life he was building in his head. The version of our life in his head had a different Elise in it, one who was more available, more focused on his trajectory, more present to the business dinners and networking events and the performance of being Caleb Grant's partner. I adjusted. I want to be honest about this. He didn't force me. He simply made clear, through 1,000 small signals, what was easier. And I, who had grown up believing love was the organizing principle of a life, organized my life around him. The writing slowed down. The evenings at my desk became evenings on the couch while he talked about his work. The pages stopped filling up. I told myself it was temporary, that this was the season of building together, and the next season would make room for both of us. 3 years passed. Then 4, then 5. We moved in together at year 3, into his apartment first, then into a house we rented together. A real house, with a yard that I planted things in, because I needed something that would grow under my hands. We talked about marriage the way people talk about a horizon, visible, real, always approximately the same distance away. When the business stabilizes, he said. The business stabilized. When we've been in the house a full year, he said. We were in the house for 2 years. I just want to get through this quarter, he said. I kept waiting. I told myself this was patience, that good things took time, that the love was real, and it was. I believe that, or at least something real enough was present, and that the timing was just complicated. What I was actually doing was the same thing I'd been doing since year 2, adjusting, shrinking, fitting myself into the space that was left after Caleb's life filled up the room. In year 6, something started to change. Not in me, in him. Caleb's business had done well, better than well. The company had grown into something significant, with clients that were recognizable names and a team of 22 people, and the kind of professional reputation that meant he was being invited to speak at things, appear on panels, be photographed for business publications. He was, by every external measure, a success. And success, I have learned, shows you people very clearly. Some people get bigger and bring everyone they love with them into the larger space. Some people get bigger and realize the people they started with feel like they're from a smaller chapter. Caleb became the second kind. I started noticing it at events, the business dinners and industry parties that I attended as his partner. The way he introduced me had shifted subtly. Earlier in our relationship, he introduced me with warmth. "This is Elise. She's the reason I don't lose my mind." Now he introduced me with a sentence that said my name and nothing else, like I was a fact rather than a person he was proud of. I noticed the way he responded when people asked about me professionally. "She's in copywriting," he would say, with a slight something in his voice that I couldn't fully name. Not dismissive exactly, more like uncertain, like he wasn't sure how to explain me in the context of the room. I was a copywriter in a room full of founders and executives. I wasn't the right accessory anymore. I noticed that he had started having dinners I wasn't invited to. "Work things," he said. "Client relationships. Important conversations." I believed him because I had spent 6 years training myself to believe him. I noticed that he was on his phone more. I noticed that when I walked into a room where he was on his phone, he didn't look up quite the same way he used to. There was a fraction of a second pause before he redirected. I noticed. I said nothing because I had learned, over 6 years, that noticing and saying something was not the same as being heard. That when I raised concerns, I was too sensitive, or reading into things, or not understanding the pressure he was under. I kept the noticing internal. And I kept waiting for the version of our life that had always been approximately a quarter away. The text came on a Tuesday night. I was at my kitchen table, our kitchen table, working on a piece for a client. It was a late spring evening, and the window was open, and the yard was full of the things I had planted, green and present. My phone was beside my laptop. It lit up. Caleb's name. I read it. 4 sentences. "Elise, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I think we both know things haven't been right for a while. I don't think we want the same things anymore. I think we need to go our separate ways. I'm sorry." That was it. That was 7 years. I sat at the kitchen table, and I read it 4 times. Not because I was confused, because I needed my brain to catch up to what my body already knew. Then I put the phone face down on the table. I looked out at the yard. I sat there for a very long time. I did not text back. I did not call, I just sat. And at some point I got up and I made tea. I don't even like tea particularly. It was just something to do with my hands. And I stood at the kitchen counter in the dark and I let myself feel the full weight of it. 7 years, gone in 4 sentences. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the bed that was half his and half mine, and I looked at the ceiling and I let the grief be exactly as large as it was. I didn't manage it. I didn't smooth it. I let it be enormous and present and real. By morning, I was something I hadn't expected to be. Not broken, not small, hollow, like a bell that has been rung and is still vibrating. And I understood, somewhere in that hollowness, that it was space. Space that had been full of Caleb Grant for 7 years. And now it was empty. And I got to decide what to put in it. The photo appeared 4 days later. I want to tell you that I was staying off social media, that I was protecting myself, that I had the wisdom to not look. I looked. I don't know exactly what I was hoping for. Something human, maybe. Some evidence that he was also struggling. Some evidence that 7 years left a mark that showed. What I found was a photograph. Caleb and a woman named Serena, standing at what looked like a rooftop party, his arm around her, her head tilted toward him. The specific body language of people who are not new to each other. Not new to each other. So this had been happening. Of course it had. Of course the 4 sentences and the 7 years ended this way. Of course there was already a next thing waiting. But the photograph itself wasn't the part that I kept returning to. It was the caption. He had written, starting a new chapter with someone who matches my ambition. Couldn't be more excited about what's ahead. Someone who matches my ambition. I sat with my phone in my hand, and I read that caption 6 times, and I felt, running underneath the grief like a current, something sharp and clear. He had been telling me for 6 years, in small, sideways ways, that I was not ambitious enough, that my work was small, that my dreams were quaint. He had never said it directly because he was too smart for that, but it was always there, in the slight something in his voice when he introduced me at events, in the way he had stopped asking about the book, in the way he had slowly made me feel like my best contribution to his life was being pleasant and present, and not taking up too much space. Someone who matches my ambition. He had left me and within 4 days was publicly declaring that what I had always suspected was true. He had thought I was less than. He had spent 7 years alongside someone he considered less than. And now, he had upgraded. I put my phone down. I walked to the room I hadn't been in for a long time. My small study, at the back of the house, where my desk was, where the pages were, the notebook I'd stopped writing in, the laptop with the file I hadn't opened in 18 months. I sat down in the chair. I opened the file. I read what was there, and I started writing. What happened over the next 14 months is the part of this story that is hardest to tell without it sounding like a movie. But it's true. Every word. I started by giving myself 3 rules. The first rule, I would not reach out to Caleb. Not to fight, not to explain, not to try to win him back. He had made a decision, and I was going to respect it completely. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had spent 6 years organizing my life around his decisions, and I was done. The second rule, I was going to do the work, the real work, the writing that I had put down and buried and excused and deferred every day, no matter what. The third rule, I was going to stop adjusting. That last one was the hardest. 6 years of adjustment had become a habit so deep I didn't always know I was doing it. Making myself smaller to fit. Softening my opinions to keep the peace, holding my ambitions lightly, because they made someone else uncomfortable. I was going to stop. I got a therapist. Her name was Dr. Wren, a small woman in her late 50s who had the calm of someone who had heard every version of a story and stayed present through all of them. She helped me do something I hadn't been able to do on my own, look at the 6 years honestly. Not to build a case against Caleb, to understand my own part. What did you give up? She asked me in our 3rd session. I thought about the writing, the book, the pages, everything I was before him, I said. Not everything, she said. It's still there. What is it you want to build now? I told her. She leaned forward. Then build it, she said. What are you waiting for? I thought about that question. What was I waiting for? There was no quarter to get through anymore. There was no timing to manage. There was no performance of a partnership to maintain. There was just me and the work and time. I started writing at 5 a.m. every morning, not because I'm a morning person, I am deeply not a morning person, but because 5 a.m. was before anything else could claim the day, before the phone, before the noise, before the world had any expectations of me, just me and the pages and the story I had been carrying for years without knowing it. The story that came out was not the book I had planned at 23. Of course it wasn't. I was 30 now. I had 7 years of a life that had shaped me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The story that came out was about a woman finding her way back to herself. Not a romance, not a revenge plot, not anything with a bow on it. A real, complicated, honest story about what it costs to disappear into someone else's life and what it takes to build your way back. I wrote it in 11 months, 42 days ahead of the schedule I had set for myself. I sent it to 3 literary agents with query letters that took me 2 weeks to write and rewrite. 2 of them responded within 10 days. Both asked for the full manuscript. One made an offer 3 weeks later. I was in the grocery store buying apples, which is the most ordinary possible location for a life-changing moment, when the email came through. I stood in the produce section with my phone in my hand, and I read it twice, and then I sat down on the floor of the grocery store, right there between the apples and the pears, and I cried. Not sad crying. The other kind. The kind that comes when something you believed about yourself for a long time, something buried, something doubted, something deferred, turns out to be true. I need to tell you about the professional moment before I tell you about the publishing one, because they happened in a particular order, and the order matters. 3 months into my writing year, I submitted a piece to a literary magazine. Not a big one, a well-regarded one, the kind that serious writers aspire to, but that doesn't have mainstream recognition. I had been reading it for a decade. I had submitted to it once, years ago, before Caleb, and been rejected with a form letter that I had folded and kept in a drawer for years anyway. I submitted a new piece, a personal essay about ambition and erasure and the strange archaeology of finding yourself after someone else's definition of you has been the dominant one for too long. They accepted it, and they put it on the cover of the online edition, and it was shared. A lot. Not viral, not millions of people, but the right people. People in the literary and creative world who read things and talked about them. Agents and editors and writers and the particular ecosystem of people who care about this kind of work. My inbox changed overnight. Suddenly, there were messages from people I had admired from a distance. People who had read the piece and wanted to talk to me. People who said things like, I had to find out who wrote this, and I've been looking for this essay without knowing I was looking for it. And there was a message from a woman named Lena, who was an editor at a mid-sized publishing house, who said, I read your essay 4 times. If you have a manuscript or are working on one, I want to read it. I had a manuscript. I sent it to Lena and to the 2 agents. The agent who made the offer, her name was Priya, warm and sharp in equal measure, helped me navigate the next part, which was the part where Lena and another editor from a larger house both expressed serious interest. We went on submission. We had 3 offers. We took the best one. My book sold on a Wednesday in November, exactly 1 year and 1 week after the text message. Exactly 1 year and 1 week after the 4 sentences that ended 7 years. I want to be clear about what the book deal was. It was not a massive advance. It was not the kind of number that makes news. It was a real deal with a real publisher for a real book that would be in real bookstores. It was enough to change my life. It was more than enough to mean something. And here is where the story finds its moment. Because here is where Caleb Grant found out who Elise Monroe actually was. The way he found out was not dramatic on my end. I posted about it. Just that. Quietly, simply, the way you announce something that is entirely and completely yours. A single post on the platform where he had posted the photo with the caption, someone who matches my ambition. I posted the cover of my book. The publisher had sent me the design, which was beautiful, which I had stared at for about an hour before I could think about anything else. And I wrote, my book sold today. 7 years of putting this dream away, and 11 months of picking it back up. To everyone who believed in this before I did, thank you. To everyone who didn't, you gave me something useful too. That was all. I did not tag him. I did not reference him. I did not perform a single word of this for his consumption. But we had 7 years of shared social connections. People who knew both of us. The world is not as large as it seems. He saw it. I know he saw it because of what happened next. I want to tell you about the phone call, because it happened and I think you need to hear it. It came about 3 days after the post. His name on my screen after 14 months of silence. I let it ring. He called again 20 minutes later. I let it ring again. The 3rd call, I answered. Not because I needed to hear from him, but because I had done enough work on myself by that point to know that avoiding something is not the same as being past it. And I was past it, and I wanted to demonstrate that to myself. Elise, he said. His voice was the same. Familiar in the way that something deeply known is always familiar, even when you've grown past it. Caleb, I said. A pause. I saw your post, he said. I know, I said. The book. That's Elise, that's incredible. A pause that had something uncomfortable in it. I always knew you could do that. I held the phone. I thought about the 6 years, the slight something in his voice when he introduced me. The way he had stopped asking about the book. The caption. Someone who matches my ambition. Did you? I said, evenly, without heat. Another pause. Longer. I want to be honest with you, he said. Caleb. I said his name gently. Not with anger, with the particular clarity of a woman who has done her work. I don't need you to be honest with me. I don't need you to revise what happened or explain it or find a new frame for it. I paused. I needed that from you 6 years ago. I needed that from you 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I don't need it now. I just want you to know I'm proud of you, he said. His voice had something in it that might have been genuine. Thank you, I said. Genuinely. And I hope things are good with you. There, a pause. Yeah, good, I said. Take care, Caleb. I hung up. And I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment. And I felt nothing dramatic. Not triumph, not the satisfaction I would have predicted if you'd told me a year earlier that this call was coming. Just completion. Clean and quiet. Like a door closing softly. The book came out the following spring. I want to tell you about the launch event, because it is the specific moment where the fullness of this story landed for me. It was at a bookstore in the city. Small venue, 100 people, but the right 100 people, the ones who had followed the essay, the ones who had been waiting, the ones who came because they had read something that reached them. I stood at the front of that room in a dress I had chosen entirely for myself. No one else's opinion factored in. No accessory role to play. Just me, and the room, and the book in my hand that had my name on the cover. I looked out at the faces. My mother was in the second row. She had been crying since she sat down and was not attempting to stop. My father beside her with his hand over hers. My therapist, Dr. Wren, whom I had invited because she deserved to be in the room. My closest friends. The ones who had been present through the 14 months, who had sat with me through the grief and the doubt, and the 5 a.m. mornings and the rejections before the acceptance. Lena, my editor, who had flown in. Priya, my agent. And people I didn't know. Strangers who had read an essay in a literary magazine and recognized something in it. People who had been where I had been. I started to speak. I talked about the book, what it was, where it came from, the story at the center of it. I talked about the long way around, about the years of putting the dream down, and the year of picking it back up, and the strange, difficult, necessary gift of having everything reorganized by loss. I didn't mention Caleb by name. I didn't need to. I spent a long time, I said, believing that being loved by the right person would feel like becoming more myself. But I had it backwards. I had been waiting to become more myself so that the right love would recognize it. The work came first. It always does. My mother made a sound in the second row. What I want to say to anyone in this room who knows what it feels like to have someone look at you and see something smaller than what you actually are, I paused. They were wrong. They will always have been wrong. And the most devastating and most joyful thing you will ever do is show up, fully, as the person they underestimated. Silence. Then the room started to applaud, and something happened in my chest that I can only describe as the bell ringing again. But this time, not hollow, full. The reviews came. Not uniformly glowing, that would be a different kind of story. A less real one. Some were simply positive. A few were enthusiastic in the particular way that sets a book apart. One was from a publication that I had read since I was an undergraduate, and it called the book an urgent, precise excavation of the self, and I printed it out and stuck it to the wall above my desk. Not because I needed external validation, but because it was just undeniably the the best sentence anyone had ever written about something I had made. The book found its readers. Not overnight. That's not how books work. But steadily. In the way that something real builds. By being passed between people who recognize what it is and hand it to someone else who needs it. A reading group in Ohio adopted it. A podcast episode about it led to 4,000 new readers in a week. A literary organization nominated it for a debut fiction award. I got to fly somewhere and attend the ceremony and sit in a room with writers I had admired for years as a colleague, not a student. I didn't win the award. I didn't care about the award. I was in the room. And I was in the room as exactly who I was. 14 months after the book came out, I sat at my desk, the same room at the back of the house, the window looking out at the yard I had planted, and I opened a new file. The second book. I stared at the blank page for a moment. Then I started to write. Here is what I know now. What I know about the promise of forever and the replacement and the caption that sent something cold and clear running through me on a Tuesday night. He wasn't wrong that I didn't match his ambition. I didn't. But not because I wasn't ambitious enough. Because my ambition was pointed in a completely different direction than his. Because his ambition was about ascent, visible, public, measurable in the ways that impress rooms. Because my ambition was about depth, about making something that mattered, that reached people, that told the truth about what it feels like to be alive in a way that could outlast the year it was made. Those are different ambitions. Neither is better, but they are not compatible in a person who needs you to reflect his. I spent 6 years trying to be his mirror. What I was actually built to be was a window. Something people look through to see something true. And when he left, when the 4 sentences arrived, and he went to find someone whose ambition pointed in the same direction as his, and he posted that caption that he thought was about her and was actually about me, he handed me back to myself. He handed me back to the desk, to the 5 a.m. mornings, to the pages, to the work. And the work was who I actually was. I had just forgotten. There is something I want to say to you. Directly. If someone has recently replaced you, if you are sitting with the weight of being the one who was left, the one who was discarded, the one they moved past in 4 sentences or less, I need you to hear this. Being replaced is not evidence that you are replaceable. Those are not the same thing. When someone chooses a newer model, when they find someone who fits the specific shape of what they need right now, the specific performance they need their partner to provide, they are not finding someone better than you. They are finding someone more convenient to their current limitations. The person who couldn't see you clearly never had the ability to evaluate what you were worth. Because here's what's true about people who need you to be smaller. They need you to be smaller because your full size is something they can't stand next to without feeling less. That is not your problem to solve. It is your gift to be released from. The man who wrote that caption had spent 6 years beside someone he was slowly obscuring, and then moved towards someone who would reflect him more conveniently. And within 14 months, the person he had obscured had written a book that was being reviewed in publications he read. I am not telling you to write a book. I am telling you to do the specific thing you stopped doing because it made someone else uncomfortable. The painting. the business, the degree, the move, the choice, the life you put in the drawer because someone else needed the space. Open the drawer. Start there. Start today. Not for the caption, not to show anyone anything. For you. For the 5 a.m. version of you that nobody else has access to, that has been waiting patiently in the dark, that knows exactly what it came here to build. My name is Elise Monroe. He promised me forever and replaced me with a caption. I went to my desk. I did the work, and I showed up, fully, completely, undeniably, as the person he thought he'd left behind. Not to ruin him, not to prove something to him, to prove something to myself, that I had always been exactly this. I just needed him to leave the room first. If you have been underestimated by someone who was supposed to know you best, the most powerful thing you will ever say isn't said to them. It's said in the dark, at 5 a.m., to the blank page. It's said in the doing, in the building, in the becoming. Say it. Build it. Become it. And let the work speak the rest.